Today I'm going to be asking the question, could the honey badger himself, Mr. Daniel Ricciardo, win a Grand Prix in 2019? Could he win the World Championship? No. No, he's not going to win the World Championship. Sorry, Renault fans. Sorry, Ricciardo fans. That's a step too far. But if he plays his cards right, if Renault have a really good off-season, who knows? And that's what we're going to discuss today. And if you enjoy Formula 1 or Formula E, feel free to subscribe as we do all that goodness around here. But if you're not aware, for the 2019 season, Daniel Ricciardo, the man with 7 wins in his Formula 1 career, will be making the switch from Red Bull, who gave him all of those 7 wins, gave him his big chance in Formula 1. He will be jumping ship and moving to Renault, which, on another side of things, Red Bull are actually ending their partnership with Renault. So it's a bit of a crazy move that Ricciardo's deciding to do this. And if you're new to Formula 1 as well, this was one of the biggest shock transfers we've seen in Formula 1, probably since Lewis Hamilton left McLaren and went to Mercedes. No one saw this coming, and looking at Renault's car this year compared to Red Bull's car this year, it seems like a crazy move. However, with Red Bull moving to Honda engines, and Renault obviously having Renault engines, could this actually be one of the greatest Formula 1 transfers of all time? You can see some of the stats there on your screen. 150 race starts, 3 pole positions, 7 wins for Daniel Ricciardo, 29 podiums. But Renault are relatively new to Formula 1. And what I mean by this is, if you're not aware, Fernando Alonso won his 2 championships with Renault. They then took part in Formula 1 up to 2010, where they then left the sport. And the team evolved into Lotus, which were my favourite Formula 1 team for their short existence. And then Renault bought back the team back in 2016. And ever since, they've been slowly building on this team. That was pretty diabolical in that first season in 2016. And every single season, they've made a step up. And last year, they got what is known as the Best of the Rest title. So it was Mercedes, Ferrari, Red Bull, and then Renault in the Constructors' Championship. And as well as that, their star driver, or number 1 driver, Nico Hülkenberg, was able to get Best of the Rest in the Drivers' Championship. And Hülkenberg is definitely no mean feat. So not only is it going to be a mega battle within this team, but the real question is, are Renault this year going to be able to make that step up once again? Now, first of all, do I think this is a good move for Ricciardo? Yes, I do. And looking at his stats last season, I really think he just wanted out of that team. He got 8 retirements in 21 races last year, and that does not even include qualifying, practice retirements. It was an absolutely shambolic display from Red Bull, and the frustration was brewing all season long till he said, you know what, screw it, I'm jumping, I'm going to Renault, I'm taking this gamble, which I am a firm believer this gamble will pay off. Maybe not straight away, but I think eventually this could be his best chance of a championship fight. 8 retirements last year. I love throwing this stat around. In his first 3 seasons in Formula 1, where he drove for HRT and Toro Rosso, for those 2.5 seasons it was really, for 2.5 seasons combined, in arguably some of the worst cars on the Formula 1 grid, he had just 6 retirements and 8 last year in a race-winning car. I mean, this isn't to say he had an awful year last season. He won 2 races, arguably, yes, at the beginning of the year, and had no podiums after those 2 races in China and Monaco, but it proved that he has the speed. However, on the other half of the garage, Max Verstappen, who was in that Red Bull, many people believe this is why Ricciardo has jumped ship. They believe Verstappen's going to take that number 1 role, which I think I can see that. I think Red Bull are a team that historically have shown preferential treatment across almost all of their driver pairings, and I think it was going to get to that stage where they were going to start looking at Max to be that number 1 driver. But moving back on to 2019 then, the fun bit, the bit I really want to talk about. What's Renault going to do? Well, if you haven't seen my predictions, links will be in the top and in the description as well. I think Red Bull are going to drop behind Renault. And I think this because Red Bull are going with Honda engines and they're not going to be world champions straight away. I think people have to realise Formula 1, things don't just stick together and work instantly. Yes, there's examples like Brawn, but even Brawn, they had foundations within that team. They didn't just come up from thin air. They were an evolution of Honda, which if Honda had stuck in F1 that year, yes, they would have had a brilliant car. So there's got to be those foundations. And I think Red Bull, for Season 1 with Honda, there's going to be issues. Whereas Renault now have been on this massive upward trajectory. And yes, at the last race of the season, they were lapped. But I think, judging by the fact that halfway through this season just gone, they seem to drop off the pace. That suggests to me that development has gone into this year's car early. And I think if they can nail these new aero regulations, they can be fighting at the front. And I've said many times, I think the pairing of Daniel Ricciardo and Nico Hülkenberg is arguably the best on the grid. And part of me wants to say it is. Because I think you've got the experience in both drivers. You've got a proven race winner in Daniel Ricciardo. You've got the mega hungry Nico Hülkenberg, who, well, this is his first real chance to prove himself up against Formula 1's top drivers. And I think he's going to rise to the challenge. And in a car that, I don't want to get carried away and say this car's going to be winning every single race or even in normal conditions. But I think with a driver like Ricciardo, who I believe is the best overtaker on the grid, with a driver like Hülkenberg, who has proved to be one of the most consistent drivers on the grid, there's going to be podiums. But is there going to be a win? That's the big one. Because realistically, even if my predictions are wrong, and Renault are the 4th best team, 6 drivers have to not finish for them to be able to inherit that. And yes, that could happen. We see a race like Azerbaijan. The last 2 seasons there's been a crazy podium. Even thinking back to Singapore 2017, where the 2 Ferraris and Max Verstappen took each other out on the very first lap. There is opportunity in Formula 1. But that's 3 examples over the last 41 races. So it's really going to have to be a little bit of touch and go for me with Renault. Yes, one particular weekend, they could show up with that car and let's randomly choose Spa. And let's say that this year, Renault, for some reason, have one of the best cars in a straight line. Where's this come from? They've really nailed the engine this year. Spa and Monza, back-to-back races, they could be right on the money. But I don't think that's really going to happen. And I think really we're going to have to look at their car being as good as the Red Bull. And then I think there's opportunity. You look at this season, Red Bull, for the first third of first 2/3 of the season, never really looked like they were going to win a race. Yet they won 3. And they had the 3rd best car. So if Renault on some weekends can be the 3rd best car, and other weekends Red Bull are the 3rd best car, which I think that's the sort of dynamic we're going to have this year, yeah, they could pick up a win. But what it's going to need is some real tensions brewing at the top. And you look at Ferrari with Charles Leclerc and Sebastian Vettel, a lot of people predicting some crazy things are going to be happening within that team this year, which I agree. And on the other side of things, at Mercedes, you look at things and you think, well, Bottas has really got to prove himself. Is he really going to go guns blazing? A little bit of me thinks he might. He might just go guns blazing and say, you know what? I've had enough of these critics. I'm going to show you guys what I can do. And Valtteri, I think he is one of the most underrated drivers on the grid, which is a strong statement. But I think he had a poor second half to the Formula 1 season, and I think he's going to want to bounce back. So I think there's going to be a lot of rivalries at the top of the championship this year, a lot of thrills and spills, and that image on screen there, we could be seeing happening much more often from yours truly, the Honey Badger. It could be a mega year, and I'm going to say it now, Daniel Ricciardo will win a race in 2019. Both Renaults will be on the podium. I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.